Hey, it's Jeff W. Welsh. Welcome to the Hardcore Happiness Podcast, where we talk about the art and science of how to create your best life. Expect to discuss mindset and purpose, the positive and the profound, and anything else that contributes to the healthiest, happiest, most successful life you can imagine. This is your sanctuary against fear-mongering and propaganda, the place to focus on a life of well-being and satisfaction and transform your world. I'm Jeff W. Welsh, and this is Hardcore Happiness. Today I want to talk about life transitions. We, of course, face hundreds of transitions in the course of a lifetime, from what car to drive, to what town we live in, what career we undertake, the schools we go to, who our romantic partners are. But there are three major transitions that I have seen bring great joy and great destruction to people. My current focus, and a major part of the Hardcore Happiness Project, is helping people who are facing these major life transitions. I routinely see and have seen for many years three areas of transition common in modern Western life that have the potential for massive growth and adventure, as well as significant disorientation and destabilization. Without proper guidance and support, I've seen people's lives ruined by these transitions. The concepts of the Hardcore Happiness Project provide you with the knowledge and tools you need to successfully navigate these rites of passage and other significant similar life changes with your happiness, self-worth, and well-being intact. The first of these transitions, chronologically speaking, is the leap into independent adulthood. This major life change occurs at different stages of life for different people and is influenced by a variety of factors. For some, the move to independent adulthood begins immediately after high school with a move directly into the workforce. This tends to be the case with young adults who don't have an immediate career path in mind. The strategy goes something like, I'll just get a job while I figure it out. This moment of transition is the moment our young person has been longing for since at least sophomore year. The new grad, who's probably legally an adult as well at this point, has now escaped from the tyranny of school and parental expectations and is finally free to ignore curfews, indulge excesses, and explore all manner of curiosities. This part Ferris Bueller, part Lord of the Flies lifestyle is wide and wonderful until the rent is due, or the best friend's couch is no longer available, and there's no food in the fridge, and going everywhere by skateboard is becoming a bit tedious. At this point, the individual has to contend with basic survival necessities, and at a minimum, that requires a source of income that will provide for food, shelter, clothing, and some sort of transportation. But even that proposition is becoming increasingly problematic as the last remnants of the middle class disappear. Inflation and the cost of living have increased exponentially, housing is out of economic reach, and home ownership is out of the question for all but a privileged few. That car that originally looked like a magical freedom machine turns out to be a black hole of expense. Gas, insurance, repairs, maintenance, and I didn't even see that car I backed into. The job market is tough right now, and many roles seem about to be replaced by automation. Geographic areas that have a lower housing cost also have greatly reduced employment opportunities. The move to independent living is especially difficult for recent high school grads who typically have no resume, no job experience, no degree, and no training. The next level of success, though, is to push back a few years and do the transition at the end of college or an apprenticeship in a trade. There's a good chance that this person's living expenses have been subsidized by some combination of living at home, parental support, and maybe student loans. The second scenario delays the full plunge into independent living for a few years, but the recent college grad or tradesman faces the same necessities, just with a higher probability of employment with adequate compensation. This person, who has demonstrated by definition the capacity to delay gratification, has a better chance of enjoying some sustainable freedom and fun, and is more likely to successfully navigate the plunge from the proverbial nest. There's thousands of other scenarios, of course, but regardless of the way the person gets there, the initial transition from dependent to independent living is difficult. And there's more to consider than just the financial implications. The average age of people who successfully move out is now late 20s or early 30s, and some studies estimate that successful launchers are 40 years old on the average. And first-time homebuyers, which is a rapidly dwindling class in itself, are in their late 30s and early 40s. The move out of the dorm or the parents' house or the group living situation is always emotionally daunting. But now, in midlife or close to it, the social, psychological, and emotional challenges are compounded. For this and many other reasons, the societal goalposts are rapidly moving with regard to careers, relationships, and child rearing. If done well, this transition is exciting and empowering. These souls are about to embark on the great adventure of the rest of their lives. If poorly navigated, this transition can doom many to a life of financial indentured servitude and feelings of hopelessness. And those feelings of hopelessness can be devastating. The psychological and emotional feelings of being cast adrift with all the pressure to live independently, but scant few of the resources with which to do so, are largely responsible for the epidemic of substance abuse, dependence upon damaging prescription medications, the ongoing fragmentation of the nuclear family, and all of the socioeconomic woes that go with that. The next great life transition skews demographically towards the female population, but is felt by and can be disorienting for both sexes. For a psychologically normal female population, specifically those who raise children, biological or adopted, early and middle adulthood at least is dominated by the role of motherhood. This is a job that is all-encompassing. It requires complete logistical, emotional, physical, and spiritual support for the young people who are trying to make it to the point that they can do their own transition into independent adulthood. But at some point, those children become independent adults, move out of the house, and begin to manage their own lives. This eventual separation is the successful culmination of all that parenting. But when the kids individuate, the caretaker, especially if it was a stay-at-home or mostly stay-at-home role, is likely to experience a significant crisis of identity. This effect is more pronounced in cases where there's no external work environment to divide attention and intent. The trade-off for the caretaker here is obvious. The caretaker whose only role is to raise children may have no other identity to fall back on when the children grow up and move out. The caretaker who splits their time between work and parenting has a viable life identity to cushion the blow of children moving out, but had less time to spend with them, and that time moves faster than you think. When every moment of the last 20 or 30 or more years has been devoted to the needs of dependent children, and then the children become independent, there can come a realization, sometimes largely subconscious, that the meaning of the caretaker's life has now reached its conclusion. The results of this empty nest syndrome are frequently devastating if not handled correctly. Handled correctly can mean anticipating and preparing for the change in an adaptive way, or, as is unfortunately more often the case, dealing with the emotional and psychological slam into perceived meaninglessness after the fact, and then having to try to rectify the situation. And it's important to note that this empty nest phenomenon also occurs with caretakers whose role is to care for people who are not their children. As adults live longer and more frequently into physical and mental senescence, the people who take care of them find themselves in the same situation when their charges eventually die. For many in today's world, this is a catastrophic double whammy. The timing frequently happens such that the caretaker experiences the loss of identity precipitated by the children moving out, and before they can adequately deal with that, begins to care for the remaining years of their own aging parents. You may have heard this referred to as the sandwich generation. These people are sandwiched in between raising their kids and managing their parents. When those parents pass away, the person is left reeling from this double loss of perceived life meaning. This situation can leave the caretakers with absolutely no idea what to do with the remainder of their own lives, which can encompass 30 or 40 years at least. I've seen this set of circumstances destroy marriages, careers, and physical and mental health when poorly managed. With the right mindset and thoughtful preparation, though, this transition is a true joy to behold. The stay-at-home caretaker is now free to develop and pursue a new purpose. Mom and dad are both likely more stable financially and emotionally, and real freedom is now possible. The caretakers now find that they have the time, money, and energy to get properly reacquainted, and regular visits to the kids become a normal part of the post-separation possibilities. Again, the concepts behind the Hardcore Happiness Project are designed to facilitate the successful navigation of this rightfully dreaded empty nest, such that all parties, caretakers and children, experience peace, joy, and stability as a normal part of that life transition. The third transition point that comes in equal parts danger and delight is retirement from the regular working world. This phenomenon was once the primary domain of the male in a traditional provider role, but for many years the distribution has become more equal as both parents have found it increasingly necessary to work to achieve financial stability. At retirement, people who may have worked 40 or more years often find themselves stripped not just of role, but of definition. In our culture, we're quick to define the very nature of who we are by the thing we do for money, in many cases. Pay attention at any party, random coffee shop meeting, or discussion with your seat neighbor on an airplane, and you will eventually hear some form of, "So, what do you do?" It's extremely rare to hear something like, "I'm a humanist invested in the pursuit of my chosen purpose and working to help others navigate their own journeys." More than likely, what you'll hear is that that person's a teacher or a dentist or a project manager for Lockheed or a pilot for United. When we think this way long enough, we train ourselves to believe that we are what we do. This is maladaptive for many reasons, none more striking than the transition that happens at retirement. Because the person who's now likely in their 60s, who has been a project manager for 40 years, is now not that thing, and hasn't given much thought as to what they could and should become. In the same way that the empty nest transition can be filled with freedom or fear, the retirement transition also has to be handled with the right support and guidance, or the person quickly can come to believe, subconsciously or otherwise, that they don't really have a reason to be at all. This late adulthood transition is particularly dangerous. Statistical evidence supports the concept that when the mind decides the ride is over, the body quickly agrees. There is a well-documented and significant spike in all-cause mortality right after retirement. While this transition into retirement is uniquely dangerous, it is also unparalleled in its potential gift of autonomy, purpose, freedom, and more fun than should probably be legal. With the right mindset, preparation, and support, retirement can be the crowning achievement of a lifetime that it should be. For me, the topic of transitions in life is personal as well as academic. I've learned what it takes to succeed in the transitions to independent adulthood, the great yawning void that is left after the children become independent, and more recently, the transition of retirement from a regular job. I've also unfortunately lost many friends and acquaintances who did not successfully navigate these transitions. The entirety of my career has been spent in close contact with and advisement of young people going through their launches into the adult world. I've worked with hundreds of people who have made their transitions into post-children and then post-retirement life, and many who have dealt with the gradual loss of their own parents. We don't always knowingly ask for, and usually are largely unprepared for, these potentially catastrophic life changes. But with knowledge and support, each of them brings massive potential for joyful growth, positive change, and unprecedented freedom. The Hardcore Happiness Podcast is live every Friday in video form on YouTube and in audio form wherever you listen to podcasts. Visit the podcast page at jeffwwelsh.studio, where you can see past episodes and listen to the latest one. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can always check out the links page at jeffwwelsh.com to contact me, or if you're interested in having me speak to your organization. Subscribe to my work on the Hardcore Happiness blog page or on the Jeff W. Welsh Substack or Medium accounts. And feel free to follow my accounts on Instagram and X. To support this community, you can donate through my Patreon account. Thanks so much for watching. I'm Dr. Jeff W. Welsh.